All right, well, kia ora koutou, everybody. I think we'll just get straight into it. So we've got a few updates from a variety of people, some extras as well from what I'd originally emailed out, which is really good. And the purpose of these calls for those of you joining is really just to serve as a bridge across the sector, because it's not intended to represent any one particular subset of the community sector, charities, NGOs. It's really meant to give us a chance to hear perspectives from a wide variety of people. So it's a great chance for us to hear an update from people that you may not know about what they're doing, and this is a chance for them to share. And then what we normally do as well is split into breakout rooms and have a chance for each of us to discuss with a smaller group what are the things that we're seeing. And then, of course, as you all know, that all gets fed back into an email that will go out to everybody on the list. And I didn't check before, but I think there's more than 200 people now who get the emails summarizing what we talked about. And I know lots of people can't join the calls for whatever reason, but they do watch the videos later. So it's quite funny, actually. I get emails during the week and people have just watched the video, so it's current for them. But for me, it's like a week before or even longer. But that's good. It's using technology well. So we're just going to get straight into it. And Robyn, if you don't mind going first. So this is kind of a follow-on from last week or 2 weeks ago when Mere was telling us about the community governance and the initiatives there. And Robyn, if you could just outline the specific aspect that you're looking at, and also just put out the information for anybody who's interested, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for the opportunity, Stephen, to talk to my colleagues from the sector. So I, for my sins maybe, or I kind of feel blessed that I've had the opportunity to participate in a sprint group that is focusing on establishing a mentoring service within this community governance sector for new board members. So our feedback, both anecdotally and through more structured feedback, has been that this is really something that this sector would use and is looking for. So there's 6 of us in our group who are currently putting together our proposal to be submitted to the steering group, of which Mele is here as the chair, I can see. Thank you, Mele, nice to see you. And so where we're at is a couple of things I would love for you and your network. If you could, it would help with our validation if you just simply came back to this group and said to the group that I'm representing, we think it's a great idea. Yes, we need some mentoring of new board members at the for community networks. My email address, I think, was sent out in the Zoom invitation, Stephen. So it's pretty simple, though. I'm Kiddle at childcancer.org.nz. So I'd really appreciate some validation if you can give it to us. It just has to be a simple yes or no, whatever it might be. So we're at the stage where we're going to be putting a proposal to the steering group next week. And what we want to do is what we'd like to do is have a feedback group representative of the community sector, that as we put this program together, it's like a co-design. So we will come up with, this is what we think might work, and then we want to go out and get validation from the people who'll be using it, that you're on the right track, or you're it's kind of democratic in a sense, and it's consensus in a sense. So if you or any of your network is interested in being part of that feedback group, please send me your details, because it's going to be, if our proposal is accepted, which we hope it will be, it will be really important that we have this feedback group on the ground to go with us as we put together this framework. So that's pretty much my ask. But the other thing also is that I'm sure Mele may also be able to tell you, this is finally being launched. Well, actually, it's not finally, it's really quick. It's being launched, the National Strategy for Community Governance is being launched in August on a webinar. And for those, what I will do in the chat function here, I'll share the link to book tickets. It's free. but they're looking for people to register to listen to the launch of this strategy, which from my perspective, being in the sector for, I'm probably a newbie, I guess, maybe I've been here 6 years. I think this is one of the most exciting things that's happened to the sector and is well needed. And I'm sure a lot of you that are out there would probably agree with that sentiment. So I will put the link to the website where you can register for tickets. And the Centre for Social Impact, which is backing this initiative, would be thrilled to see as many people as possible attend the launch. That's my ask. Thank you, Stephen.
Great, thank you very much. That's really clear. And what we'll do is in the email that I send afterwards, we'll put a little summary of what you said, and we'll put your email in as well, and have some information. Yeah, so I'm going to turn to Matt Steele, if that's okay, because I know, Matt, you might need to drop off and do some other things. But I was really curious. I'm a member of IOD and a facilitator for some of the courses for company directors, and noticed at the AGM recently that there was a new not-for-profit hub that had just been announced. So I just asked if Matt could come on and explain a little bit about what that is, just so that we all know. And if you have any requests or anything, Matt, then feel free to share those. But over to you to introduce yourself and explain what's going on there.
Thanks very much, Stephen, and kia ora koutou, everyone. Thanks, Stephen and Anne. First off, thanks for the invitation to this this group, but also thanks very much for the article you recently produced for the IOD. Sits on the front page of our website. If anyone hasn't read their white paper on creatives in the boardroom and wants the shortened version, then it's a great little article and well worth checking out. Certainly an aspect of diversity that I think is really important for our boardrooms. As Stephen said, so my name is Matt Steele. I'm the Content and Channels Manager at the Institute of Directors. I recognise a few of your names, but may not have seen some of you in person. As you may be aware, the Institute of Directors has recently published a not-for-profit governance hub. It's a collection of a lot of content which we've had on our servers and on our website over time, but sort of just bringing it all together. And we're committed to producing more content and reaching out to the NFP networks around New Zealand to work with you more closely to get together key resources and articles on the NFP sector that we can publish through that hub. So no doubt some of you have been in contact already with the Governance Leadership Centre here at the IOD and Kirsten Patterson, KP. You'll have a close relationship as well. But look, I encourage you to check it out if you're in the governance sphere, and you can find the hub on the front page of the website. We're trying to make as much of the content available to everyone as we can. There's a few bits and pieces which we're reserving for IOD members only. But if there's a real need for it, please drop us a line and we might be able to push it out from behind the member paywall. And yeah, so basically the NFP hub, iod.org.nz. Thanks for the shameless pitch, Stephen, but guides and templates, plenty of articles on there. We've got some webcasts, and if you do have webcasts for your own organisations coming up that touch on governance in the NFP sector, then please let us know, and we're happy to push them through our networks as well. So please have a look, and there's more to come. So thanks very much for your time.
That's great. Thank you very much, Matt. And I think this is a great example of oftentimes organizations, and particularly like peak body organizations, are producing content and putting material out there. But sometimes we don't know about another organization that has these resources. So that was the reason for asking Matt to come on, just so that we all know that that exists, because sometimes we are in our own bubbles and we don't hear about these things. Andrew Phillips, if I could turn to you next, that would be awesome. Just from Charities Services perspective, just keen for an update on what you're seeing. It's been a while since you've spoken, so it'd be great to hear from you. And that's the update from Charity Services. No, that's okay. We'll come back to you if we can, Andrew. It might be that the internet connection wasn't so good. And you can just do it in 2 weeks as well. Well, let's turn instead to Ros Rice. So Ros, can we have an update from you, just Community Networks Aotearoa? What are some of the things you're seeing? And then at a higher level, anything, conversations you've been having? And also we had a little radio chat, didn't we, a week or so ago? So that was quite fun talking about this group.
Yep. Kia ora everybody. I wasn't quite clear or sure what you wanted to hear, so I thought I'd just do you a bit of a round robin on the sort of things that have been happening that I've heard about in my sector now, because just because we've gone to level 1 does not mean that this is all over. So I would like to acknowledge first of all the positives that we've seen through going through, this is specific to COVID. And the positives include the fact that a lot of us are working together in new and innovative ways, and there's lots of new learnings and technology and new awarenesses of ways to live your life. I think that's really important. Everybody's missing the bird song now the traffic's come back. But anyway, it's not over. There are many, many issues left, and they're specific to the sector that I'm talking about and the people that I tend to work with. So looking through the information I've been sent, here are some of the main issues that we still need to be aware of that came up during lockdown and still need to be addressed. Housing, and they're in no particular order. Housing, some of the issues there, Oranga Tamariki has indicated they want some children to be returned to their mothers. The problem is mothers can't, quite a lot of mothers can't access housing, so their children can't go back. There's stories of abuse coming through to me from some social housing establishments. There's a need for workers to get housed. The construction industry needs to employ lots of workers, but in a lot of places there's no housing for them. Rural housing is inadequate for people who would need to move in to provide services, and the cost of renting is still too high for many people living in poverty. And a lot more people who have lost jobs are looking for housing they can afford, and then finding that they can't find it. They weren't in that situation before. And the reality of the cost of renting is hitting them now. And so we do need to try and help contribute to new and innovative ways to quickly provide housing. And I'm sure that if Chris Waddell has anything to add, Chris, feel free. But those are just some of the issues I've heard of. Migrants and immigrants, we've been reporting to government about the issue of migrant workers who can't access support since the very beginning of lockdown. And examples that I can give that are really obvious, places like Queenstown and Waiheke Island, where a lot of overseas workers have been left without income or support. And it's really interesting because 2 weeks ago, Kelvin Davis and Jacinda Ardern visited Queenstown. And from that came a raft of measures to help migrant workers. But I haven't heard whether those measures actually are only focused on Queenstown or if they're looking at places like Taupo and Waiheke and Tauranga and different places where there are migrant workers. I just want to say that I've been reporting to government on Central Otago and Waiheke concerns up the line for quite some time now. Poverty is probably a huge issue, and these are my 3 main issues anyway. Unemployment levels are still going up, and this issue will affect the well-being of many people for some time to come. I acknowledge changes to the apprenticeship scheme, and it's especially good because there's no age limit on that, and anything else that can help people retrain and get into work is good. But the ability with poverty, the ability for people to stay warm over winter, to access healthcare, access food, access housing and so on, all those things are affected by poverty. So I'd like to see government find more funding to lift benefits and support people, especially as we have a lot of new people living in these circumstances. And it's really interesting seeing the Greens suggestion for lifting people out of poverty that came through. We'll see if any of that gets picked up. I think that, however, when we're talking to each other, funding for NGOs is a big issue. I'm just going to briefly halt there because Patty wanted to add something at this point. Patty, do you want to just do your quick
Sure thing. Hello, everybody. I was just very intrigued about, in terms of governance and compliance, how many of you were aware of the modifications in the COVID-19 Response Act of 2020 regarding charitable trust boards, multi-governance entities, friendly societies, incorporated societies and stuff? Can I just have a show of hands if people are aware of what the changes are? Not many, couple. Let's go. I'm going to send you the link, but briefly, it provides for modifications and exemptions if your constitutional rules don't allow certain ways of voting, or people need to be present, or the use of electronic means, electronic voting and electronic signatures. The Act allows for you, with as long as you fill out the form and tell the registrar, to actually avoid those parts of your constitution, and specifically section 10, 14 and 15 give you the rundown. I'll give you the link so you can have a look yourself. One of the things is that the law came into effect on the 15th of May, but is retrospective into March through to November and affects AGMs and special general meetings. So if you could disseminate that throughout your groups as well, in terms of making sure they are compliant, and the fact that this allows them easier ways to hold those meetings from now on.
Yeah, cool. Until November.
Yes, there's until November, and then it can be extended if need be, but not past 31st of March next year.
Okay. So just getting back into the issue of funding for NGOs, I want to acknowledge Dunedin, Christchurch, Hamilton, Wellington, and hopefully other city councils who are setting up really quite reasonable sized support funds for NGOs in their regions, because a lot of the NGOs who are really at the edge are what we call the invisible communities, people who haven't previously received funding from government, but they're in real strife at the moment because for many of them, they're not sure where to access funding. And there is an interesting survey out by Philanthropy New Zealand that might help clarify some of those issues for them. However, what I did find during the lockdown and when we were all working from home that really concerned me was a real lack of knowledge of the sector and the community from government agencies. Civil defence, really, some of the civil defence organisations were fantastic, but then there are some civil defence who haven't the foggiest idea about the communities they were working in. I can give you an example of that. A civil defence agency went into a hui with people within a region in central North Island and asked who a woman was who spoke with authority. And she was a very well-known and highly respected kuia in the local iwi. The iwi were really insulted and sent me a message to say they'd never work with civil defence again. But if she had just known something about the community, there's no way she could not have known about that woman. But they went into a hui without any information at all, without any knowledge. So I do think that, but that lack of information from government agencies, lack of knowledge about us, is a real core issue. I also did a presentation to 7 different agencies on the invisible communities, and I asked them how many knew anything about the sector, and they all knew about who they funded. They didn't know about anyone else. And, you know, I took the statistics from the satellite report that came out after the last census and showed them the statistics of how much we contribute to GDP and the size of our workforce, and they did not know any of those things about us. They were quite amazed. So I think that's core stuff that maybe government agencies who are funding us should actually be up to date with. They do also, there seems to be, it's not across the board, but there is a pervasive belief within government agencies that we're all 100% volunteers. So they don't understand about our workforce, and that's a concern. And there's a belief also that government knows all the NGOs that are out there, but they don't get that the organisations not funded by government are virtually invisible to public servants. So that sort of core lack of understanding, I think, probably leads to a lot of other issues that we have trying to have dialogue sometimes with different government agencies. I think that there's also a lack of understanding about the role that all the NGOs played in supporting communities over lockdown, and that feeds into concerns for how we represent ourselves in the future. There's a continuance of funding starvation. Well, actually, I say the continuance of funding starvation that we all experienced over the last 13 years, and the lack of understanding of the situation for non-funded NGOs who have lost access to funding. So I am concerned about what happens if, God forbid, there's a second wave. And a lot of our smaller NGOs who are embedded in communities haven't survived. So I just want to say that the philanthropy survey that I previously mentioned, 38.10% of philanthropists' funding is going to stay the same. 34.5% of philanthropists are talking about decreasing funding, or they don't yet know what they're going to do. So those are just some of the things that are facing our sector at the moment that have come up with me. And the NIWA group that I was on, the welfare group, the welfare arm of National Emergency, they have stopped now their Zooms, their weekly Zooms, and I no longer send reports up. So I'm currently in discussion with MSD and Oranga Tamariki about ways that we can continue to send reports that do get sent up to government ministers. We need to find another doorway to continue to inform them. And that's me.
Great, thank you. That was great. Lots of different points there. And Nicola Sutton, you've messaged me that you had an extra little bit to add there in terms of the Red Cross. Do you want to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, so just when Ros was talking around the issue of temporary migrant workers and other people that are here in the country not having support, just wanted to let you know, and I've forwarded to Stephen some stuff to be sent out with the follow-up from this meeting, but Red Cross is working with the Department of Internal Affairs to offer support, and so the government have pulled together a foreign nationals impacted by COVID-19 program, which Red Cross have pulled together as Visitor Care Manaaki Manahiri, where they'll deliver all kinds of assistance to foreign nationals meeting basic needs such as food and accommodation, and access to temporary assistance and even support for people to get air tickets home if they've are needing to get home and there isn't the money to do that. So Red Cross in their press release on the 1st of July around it sent out an eligibility poster and a set of FAQs, which are really, really useful. And so I think if we can get that disseminated out to your community groups, Ros, that would be one way of getting that out into communities, but any umbrella groups that could get this out there. From what I understand, if I recall the press release from government rightly, I think it was something like 37 million put aside for it. So we're talking significant support available for temporary migrants in New Zealand.
Great, thank you for that. It's always good to get these additional bits of information that we might have missed otherwise. Yeah, and I'll put links and things in the follow-up email. And that goes for anything. If any of you have other updates that you'd like shared with the wider group, just send them through as an email and happy to drop them in. So Chris Grodell, do you mind giving an update on the ComVoices State of the Sector survey? I understand that had been postponed, but you're now running it. So it'd be great.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself and tell a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah. And as I move forward, I'm right in the sunshine in Wellington. Who knew? Haven't seen that for a week. Again, Chris Glaudel, current chair of ComVoices, also deputy chief executive with Community Housing Aotearoa. And briefly, the ComVoices State of the Sector survey had come out just about a week and a half, 2 weeks before the lockdown started. So we paused. We restarted early last week, and the survey will be open until 20 July. And this is the fourth in a series that we've done biennially in really trying to document the size and the activities of the sector. So, Ros did a good job of explaining how often people are invisible. We do ask questions about the number of staff, number of volunteers, and it's building up this kind of longitudinal view of changes within the sector. So any assistance that folks could provide in distributing that and encouraging responses would be very much appreciated. we had intended to have this done and dusted and to be part of the work that we put forward is alongside Hui E and Trust Democracy and Subarca Charities along the webinar a couple of weeks ago. But you go with the hand that's dealt you, and we're still hoping to get this information complete and out so that we can engage further and have information out to all of you that are engaging with politicians about needs in your community with some updated statistics on where the sector is and the trends that we're seeing. And I put the link to the SurveyMonkey in the chat already. Thanks, Steve.
Great, thank you very much. So those were the people that had said they had something to update us with from the sector. So that's taken us through the first half of the way this runs. If any of you have an update that you'd like to share at the next one, it'll be in 2 weeks' time, and just drop me a line, and happy to, again, hear different voices, different perspectives. But what we do next is we move into a breakout room session time. So what I'll do is send you into some breakout rooms, and it would be good to hear some of your learnings and reflections. And I don't have any, you need to talk about this during this call. So just introduce yourselves, have a chat, and then come back. And then if one of you are able to summarize what you've said or what the main themes were and email it through, then I can send that out to the wider group, and also summarize back to the people who are in this meeting. So I'm just gonna send you to a few rooms, and I'll leave the rooms open for about maybe 12 minutes or so. So I think what we'll do, if one of you are able from each of the groups, just to give us an overview of things that you talked about. We don't need to go into all the details, but just a high level overview. And then if it's possible for you to send a just bullet point, it can just be like 3 bullet points or something. Some of the key themes that emerged or information that was helpful for the others. That would be great. Does anybody want to step up and go first?
Hey Stephen, it's Stewart here. I don't mind going first.
Great.
For those of you that don't know, I work at Inland Revenues. So I just put to the group what was their thoughts on the government's response to COVID, and it was pretty overwhelmingly positive, to be quite honest. A really good government response, good information about funding, good communication, good grants that were well targeted, no massive overburden of compliance was, I think, the main message. That high trust environment by government was really appreciated. Yeah, so that was a pretty big theme. And of course, that puts pressure on government to deliver in the future, right? Because there's a lot of questions about if you can deliver really well and really quickly. So for COVID, why don't we do that all the time? And I think the last piece I took from that was outside the government side. Lockdown created a lot of opportunities. And so when we might have thought that 15% of people might have done things online, 53% did. So actually, yeah, a lot of innovation and opportunities created through COVID as well.
Great, thank you.
I'm happy to go next if you like.
Sure.
I'm Holly from Community Waikato. I feel a little sorry for my group. I kind of dumped on them about some of what we've been seeing. So we're a capacity building organisation in the Waikato region. We work with community and social service organisations who might need support around planning or financial literacy and all of those sort of things. But the big thing that we've seen since COVID has been a real increase in conflict in organisations. And a real need for both legal and HR advice, which has been really concerning. And we're seeing this right across our region as well. So it's not just sort of Hamilton City, but it's in various places around our region. And I was saying, my team, we're dealing with around 8 or 9 of these different organisations going through quite serious conflict where PGs are a real possibility as well. And then we sort of talked about the issues around this is that NGOs generally find it really hard to get funding for legal advice or HR support or these kinds of things. It's not easy to fund that type of work, but can really quickly make an organisation insolvent should they need that type of advice. So that's kind of what we were really talking about, and also that broader difficulty in accessing funding at the moment generally, and seeing some pretty significant funding reductions coming through already, even from some funding that had previously been confirmed coming back with cuts. So obviously that also has a significant impact on the financial sustainability of organisations.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting the next few weeks, months, because we're in a way we're in this interim period where the wage subsidies have been going and we've there's no community transmission, everybody's happy, but at some point things are going to change again, and it'll be interesting to see how organizations and individuals respond at that point as well. All right, was there one more group? I think there was a group of 6, a group of 5, and a group of 4.
Yeah, I can report back from our group. So we were talking about the need for a community resilience fund or the community development fund, lead development fund that closed last year, and there hasn't been any more. That essentially it just needs some input at that operational level to really help the nonprofit sector through this next phase. And we also talked about new charities. We talked about some of the research that's coming out from the COVID impact survey that we partnered with Volunteering New Zealand and Philanthropy New Zealand and Centre for Social Impact. So the results are coming out on the 29th of July. So we talked about that, and also that, which I can provide a summary in the email, but that Hui E is pulling together a group of people to look at putting a proposal up to government to re-establish the Office of Community and Voluntary Sector, which was absorbed in 2011 into DIA and doesn't sit separately anymore. And that ability to have that collective voice and a key point of contact was really highlighted during the lockdown. So, yep. And then just finally that I've put out the call again, which I put out last time, which is if anyone wants to write about the election and the impact on the community and voluntary sector or their specific area, they're welcome to write a blog. We're following up from the election webinar that we had, which Chris already mentioned, with Com Voices and Trust Democracy and Sobaka Charities Law, with 6 political parties talking about their response to community and voluntary sector. They also all supported the re-establishment of the office. So I think we're in... hopefully we can make something that will actually stick and then offer to work with government to make that happen. So I'm happy if anyone else in the team had anything else to add.
Must have been a good summary. Thank you. That's great. Well, I think this serves a purpose, so I'm just going to continue as we're doing it now every 2 weeks. I feel like that's frequent enough and not too frequent, but clearly it's a vehicle or a way to get messages out and also to connect us across, because like I said, there's quite a few people who get the emails and aren't necessarily on the call. So if you do have anything you want to share with others, then pass that on. I don't have anything else to say really, so if anybody would like to speak at the next one, drop me a line. There's some things I've got in mind in about a month or so that will have a specific focus, but be watching out for the email. If you're able to send me the summaries of what you just said, that would be great, because I'm planning to send out the update later this afternoon with the video link, so I'm going to go and edit it up and get it out quickly. And the reason is that I'm on holiday next Monday to Wednesday, so want to get it done before I go away. Yeah, and I know some of you will have kids about to join you for holidays, so all the best for that. And the other thing is I continue doing Seeds podcasts, so if you're ever driving places and you need something to listen to, I've just hit 190 episodes of that, and just hit 70,000 listens across all of those episodes. So it's quite a fun initiative. And the latest is with Anau Misui Henry, who's a Tongan immigrant, about her life story and coming to New Zealand. So yeah, I just want to say thanks so much for joining, everybody, and hope you have a good rest of your days. Thanks.